How is everyone? Very good. I like that music, by the way. That's an outstanding choice there. It is my pleasure and privilege to be able to bring up our next guest here during FanFest. It's a man whose career in pro baseball began back in 1975 when he was drafted in the first round by the Houston Astros and assigned to their rookie ball club in Covington, Virginia. He had a 14-year playing career that included portions of 9 seasons in the big leagues with Houston, the Mets, and the Padres. He then embarked on a managerial career that started in Spokane, Washington in 1989 in the Padres system. In 1995, he landed his first big league managerial job with the Padres, a club he managed for 12 seasons. Then in 2007, he was hired to manage the San Francisco Giants, a club that he skippered for 13 seasons and guided to 3 World Series titles. After a 3-year hiatus from the game, he agreed to return and manage the Rangers, leading the team to its first World Series title in 2023. He's one of only 6 managers to lead his teams to at least 4 World Series titles, and one of only 3 managers to win titles for teams in both leagues. The only other men to do that, Sparky Anderson and Tony La Russa. In 2024, he vaulted past Joe McCarthy and Bucky Harris to move into 8th place on the all-time managerial wins list with 2,171 career regular season wins. Ladies and gentlemen, entering his 28th season as a manager in the big leagues and his 3rd with your Texas Rangers, please welcome the one and only Bruce Bochy. It's a nice perspective on things out here in center field. This is the look that Leody Taveras and Wyatt Langford and those guys have.
It is. You know, you come out here, if you look at home plate, you realize it takes a pretty good bolt to get out of center field. I mean, and, you know, sometimes when I shag or when I walk in my pregame little workout, I look at the home plate and I go, man, it's a long ways out here. Makes you appreciate what Leo and Evan Carter and Wyatt do when they run down these balls out here.
All right, now you just had an opportunity to meet with members of the Texas Rangers at media, and you got asked a number of questions. And one of the questions that you got asked here in the offseason, you've had the opportunity to golf with both Corey Seager and new acquisition Jake Berger, who happens to live very close to you in Nashville, but you were asked about their golfing prowess. Can these guys hit it?
Yeah, actually, Corey lives close to me, too. He's not in the same golf community like Berger is. But, they got tremendous club head speed, obviously. I was kidding both of them, though. It's hard to see who's longer because one's going way right, the other one's going way left. And so I said I didn't know how to measure that to tell you who hits it further. But they both crush it. And, but we had a good day out there playing. And, both of them are so committed to baseball. It's not like they golf a lot. So, and I'm the shortest now, believe me, as far as getting off the tee.
How are you hitting them these days, though?
You know what? It's been a struggle, to be honest. I used to play a lot, but I don't play that much. I started playing again, and you realize how tough that game is. You get older, your birthdays catch up with you. You just can't hit as far, and it's frustrating. So now I got my kids out driving me by 100 yards.
All right, here you are. You've completed 2 seasons managing the Rangers, season 3 coming up here in 2025. Rangers have done quite a bit of work in the offseason in terms of acquisitions. Of course, signing Nathan Eovaldi to a new 3-year deal really helps to shore up the starting rotation. We mentioned Jake Berger, a guy that you acquired in a deal with Miami. Jock Peterson now on the club. You've basically had to revamp your bullpen. As you get set to go out to spring training, what's most exciting for you?
Well, you nailed it with signing Nate. I thought that was huge to shore up, as you said, the starting rotation. We know what he means. to this club. So, I was really, really happy that day, believe me. Look at the bullpen. That's, we got some good arms to work with. We're balanced down there. And so that would be Mike Maddox's and our priority in spring training is to get that sorted out and kind of, get to know these guys. We know them, but, haven't been around them. And just to find out, where their strengths and weaknesses are. And so that's going to be an important part of our job. Now, as far as, Jock Peterson, he's going to be swinging the bat. I haven't had a chance to talk to him today, but I need to talk to him and make sure he has a glove. But, with Burgers, the thing about Jake is he's going to focus at first base. He's not going to be taking ground balls anywhere else but first. That's going to be our priority, is to get him used to playing first base. He played it last year, and I watched it, and it's pretty good, but it's only going to get better with reps.
Jake, growing up, also played a little hockey. Do you think maybe that helps in any way, playing baseball and playing a corner infield spot?
I'm trying to think there, hockey. I get this thing about knocking it down. I want them to catch it. Hockey players are. What great athletes they are. So, any sport. I tell parents this. Everybody gets specific in a sport, but every sport helps you in some way somewhere else. And hockey is not just the conditioning, but it's a reaction to the puck. So I'm sure it has to help them.
All right, 2023 World Series champions. Last year, the team with 78 wins. But after winning your fourth World Series title and doing it with this club, a new club after winning 3 with San Francisco, what's the question that you've been asked most often about winning that World Series title in 2023?
About the World Series itself?
Yeah, just about winning the World Series again for a fourth time. What question have you gotten most often?
Well, to come out of retirement, do it my first year. They think there's some secret recipe or something. What is it we do different? Yeah, you get asked that, but it starts with the talent on the field, and I knew we had that. I knew we had a team that could get to the World Series. So that's certainly what helped bring me out of retirement. I was excited about this ball club, and so now last year, we came off the road there a little bit, but it's not like we have a lot to do here. We know that, and with our new additions, we really expect this team to make you guys proud and do some exciting things this year. That's what I'm excited about as we go into spring training, and we've got some work to do. When you don't get the postseason next year, you got a lot of work, and so that's what we'll do in spring training. We had 7 weeks, get this club ready, to start our journey back to the postseason.
You hear it said often that, a key to any team's success is you got to stay healthy, and that gets overused. But in your case, it really is true for 2025. You need to be healthier than you were in 2024.
Yeah, I've said that. They always ask, why is it so difficult to go back to back? And every season I was talking about takes a life of its own, and you got to have your normal years from your players, but it does get overused, but it's the truth. Injuries played a significant role in our season. We had a quarter of our lineup that was out. Evan Carter and JJ for the most part. Corey, when he started his season, he was coming off the hernia surgery. So, but you're right. It can get overused, and now it becomes an excuse, and that's what you don't want to happen. Poor us or pitiful us. We can't do that, and that's why depth is so important. And we feel like we have a lot of depth this year.
All right, we're going to do a little jumping around. I'm going to be like a 15-year-old learning how to drive here all over the road with various questions throughout the course of your career in the game. I mentioned that you were a first-round draft pick of the Astros back in 1975. They assigned you to their then rookie ball club. I said Covington, Virginia. I'm guessing it's Covington, Virginia, and not Covington, Ohio, or Kentucky. But you get drafted in the first round, you report to spring training, and then you get assigned to Covington. What do you remember about that first season playing in the Appalachian League?
Well, first of all, I loved Covington and the Appalachian League. First, my first memory was driving up to Covington, and I had a blue Nova, and I was driving up there, and I was getting close to Covington, and all of a sudden started this awful smell. I didn't know what was going on, and then I thought somebody played a joke on me, and put a fish under my hood to cause this smell. And I got out and I looked around. Well, Covington's a paper mill town. If you ever been near a paper mill town, you'll know what I'm talking about. And once you live there, you get used to it. You don't notice it, but driving up to it was just a terrible smell. Very, very small town. I lived in a trailer with 4 other guys. They think, you signed a professional contract, you live in a high life. We had 5 of us in a little trailer in a trailer park, and I slept on the floor, but I had a terrific time. And I still keep in touch with a lot of those players. And now the Appalachian League, in fact, one city we played in was Johnson City, where Evan Carter's from. So, and I said when I do retire, for the real retirement, I'm going to go back and drive through all those cities, Bristol, Johnson City, Pulaski, all those towns we played in.
A lot of those cities that you talk about that were in the Appalachian League in '75 were there prior to that and are still there today. It's been one of the more, stable, lower-level leagues in all of baseball. Covington is in the very western part of Virginia, near the West Virginia border. And you say you stay in touch with those guys. You remember your first manager there in Covington?
Oh, Billy Smith. I'll never forget him. Your first-year manager, I think, impacts a player as much as any manager. You're just getting into professional ball. You don't know what's ahead of you. You got that unknown factor, and Billy was tough. He was tough on me, and I was the number 1 pick, but I was in the secondary phase, so I wasn't like a Wyatt Langford, get that big bonus. The secondary phase was for players who had previously been drafted, so it's a little different, and but still, you get that label, and so Billy, I think, took it upon himself. He's going to be tougher on me. And I was having a great year there. And 2 weeks ago in the season, I blocked the ball in the dirt. I was an ex-catcher, and I went to pick up the ball, and I tore my ACL, so I didn't get to finish the season. And so, anyway, that was really changed my career because my knee was never the same.
But you recovered from that because it didn't take you long to make it to the big leagues. That was 1975. And your big league debut came with the Astros during the 1978 season. So that's a fairly rapid rise from rookie ball getting to the big leagues. What do you remember about that call up to Houston in 1978?
Yeah, well, first of all, my rise was sped up because back then you could run over the catcher. You had a lot of home plate collisions, and Reggie Baldwin, who was the number 1 catching prospect ahead of me, he was blocking home plate against the wrong guy, Dave Parker, who just went in the Hall of Fame, and Parker hit him at home plate and knocked him out, and he never caught in the big leagues again. And so that's why I'm glad they changed that rule. But for me, they didn't have anybody else to call up. I was in Double-A. I wasn't even in Triple-A. They called me up, but I was in Knoxville, and I had like $12 on me, had no clothes, and they said, we want you to meet us in New York. You're going to big leagues. I mean, your heart's pumping, you're calling. We didn't have cell phones back then. So I go to New York. I go to the New York Sheraton, and nobody's there. And I didn't know it. I turned on the TV. Houston's playing in Houston. So I said, somebody got me good on this one, this prank. Here I was 22, 23 years old, and by myself with $12 on me, no credit card. Luckily, the next day, my old roomie in spring training got called up from AAA. Back then, you had roommates. You don't anymore. So, I was a little more comfortable. But all I remember is we had a doubleheader the first day. I didn't know if I was going to play the second game, and I was so nervous. Just don't embarrass yourself. Don't embarrass your family. And when Bill Burton, who was the manager, after the first game, the manager would come out and call out the lineup, and he mentioned my name, and I thought I was having a heart attack. And but I actually had one of my better games, but I was very, very nervous.
When I take a look at some of the guys that you played with, and in that first season of 1978, the Astros had a couple of pitchers that, when I think about not only the person that they were, but the kind of pitchers that they were, they couldn't be more opposite. You were handling a staff that included J.R. Richard and Joe Niekro. What was it like handling those two guys, and what were they like?
It was the toughest staff, and I think in baseball to catch. J.R. Richard, for some of you don't know who J.R. Richard would be in the Hall of Fame if he didn't have a stroke in 1980. He's about 6'9", and he had these long arms and fingers, and he threw over 100. We ended up getting Nolan Ryan on that team too in 1980, but J.R. and his ball had so much movement because he had these long fingers, and he threw his slider at 93, 94, and he didn't have the best control. And Joe Niekro was a knuckleballer, so it was a really, really tough staff to handle, and but it was the best staff in baseball. And we played in the old Astrodome, which was huge, bigger than this park, and so every game was 1-0, 2-1. So it was critical that you block balls well, you could throw out runners, and play the little ball to help win ball games. But just a incredible staff that we had. We had Joaquin Andujar on that staff too.
Wow. When you had to catch Joe Niekro, did you have a special mitt for catching him as opposed to the other guys?
I did. When I got called up in 78, I wore glasses, and that corrected my astigmatism. Then the next year, I went to contacts, and it didn't correct my astigmatism. My depth perception was off. All of a sudden, I was really struggling catching Joe and catching pop-ups. And it was like 2 years later when I got traded to the Mets, they go, your contacts aren't correcting your astigmatism. So, I was really at a disadvantage, and I didn't know it. And all of a sudden, I was missing fastballs, but we got it fixed, and luckily I found my way back up to the major leagues.
And you spent a good deal of time in the major leagues, portions of 9 seasons. You played not only for Houston, you mentioned getting traded to the Mets. You had 1 year with them. Then you played for the Padres. Obviously, being a backup catcher, when you take a look at offensive stats, that's not anything that people focus on because that's not really your job. But over the course of your 9 years in the big leagues, you had 2 triples. Do you remember those 2 triples?
I do. I really remember one in St. Louis. I was one of the slowest humans around. Believe me, I was. The speed gene is not in the Bochy family. In fact, my youngest son married a track star from Kansas, KU. I said, "Nice work. We got to change this gene here." But I hit one down the left field line in St. Louis, and the left fielder was a guy named Andy Van Slyke. And Andy was trying to get it off the wall, and he bobbled it a couple of times, and they didn't give him an error. And I was rounding second. I go, hey, I think I got third base, and I got it. So the next day in the paper, they asked Van Slyke, they interviewed him after the game, what took you so long to get the ball back in? He goes, well, I was playing pinball back there, against the wall, and I won a free game, so I kept playing. And that was one of my triples. I kept that article.
All right, and then you had a total of, I think, 26 career home runs. And one of those home runs you hit off of Nolan Ryan, and it was a walk-off home run, was it not?
It was.
It was a walk-off, and if I'm correct, it's the only walk-off home run that Nolan ever relinquished in his 27 years as a pitcher in the big leagues. So take us through that walk-off.
Yeah, well, first of all, I caught him in Houston a little bit.
Yep.
And now I'm with San Diego, and they come in town, and I wasn't a good hitter, but I could hit a fastball if I knew it was coming pretty good, And so I caught Nolan at the end of this game. And now his velocity is probably down to 95 versus 102, 103. And he threw me a fastball on the inner half, which is one pitch I could hit decent. And I hit it out. And so obviously one of my bigger hits with my career. And all I remember, well, first of all, Nolan, who comes here once in a while, he still says, "I don't remember that." I go, "Yeah, you do. You remember it." Because 2 days later, they were still in town. He was on the right field line taking a bullpen, and I was shagging. We were taking batting practice, and I hear this Boch. I look over there, and it's Nolan. He goes, "I got something for you next time I face you." And he dropped down here and threw it about 100 miles an hour, right where my head would have been. So that's why I kid him. I said, "You remember."
So now you finished your playing career, and you got into managing. Your last year as a player was in 1988, and then the Padres hired you to manage their Northwest League, I guess, affiliate in Spokane in 1989. Was managing something that you thought along the way was something that you wanted to do, that you felt you could be good at?
It was something I really wanted to do. I was getting at the end of my career. I was pretty banged up. I'm taller and the catching. I had that ACL. That knee bothered me pretty much my whole career, and that's why you see this nice gait that I have. And my shoulder, I tore it, tore my rotator, and so I was getting to where I was ready to maybe take the next step. And I thought I really wanted to manage. I didn't know if it would go into college route or professional ball. And our general manager was a guy named Jack McKeon, longtime baseball manager and general manager. And so he had me be a player coach in Las Vegas to mentor a young catcher named Sandy Alomar Jr., who ended up having quite a career. And then after that, I started managing. And I fell in love with it. I was in Spokane. I heard you mention Spokane. And I never saw myself managing the major leagues. I mean, I had that on such a high pedestal. I could have done it in the minor leagues and, the rest of my life. Well, it wasn't a lot of money in it, but it's what I love to do. And fortunately, a young general manager named Randy Smith took a chance on me in 1995. I wasn't a big name or anything, and named me manager of San Diego.
And you started there, as you mentioned, in 1995. You managed the Padres for 12 years. You did have them in the National League Championship Series and winning and going to the World Series. From your time in San Diego, you had an opportunity, and obviously in San Francisco as well, but to manage a number of really good Major League ball players. And yesterday, during our awards ceremony, we talked a little bit about Rickey Henderson and Bob Uecker, two men who have throughout the course of their lives brought so much joy to so many different baseball fans throughout the years in different ways, even though Bob Uecker was also a player before he became a broadcaster. But we talked a little bit about those men, and you had the opportunity to encounter both. But tell us a little bit about Rickey Henderson when you had him and what that was like.
Yeah, Rickey, we ended up bringing Rickey on board in San Diego, and I had heard some things that Rickey could be a handful, and I still say he's one of the best teammates I've seen. How to see how much those young players liked Rickey and really how he carried himself. Now, I got him toward the end of his career, but he was a great guy. His locker, my office in San Diego was right beside Tony Gwynn, and Rickey's locker was right beside Tony, and so I got a chance to get to know him really well, and I was really proud of our relationship, because when I go to Oakland, I'd see him and we would always talk, and the greatest leadoff hitter ever. He impacted the game as much as any power hitter, and he had power, but he had style. And I keep talking about we're in the entertainment business. He was entertaining. And I told a story last night. I'll tell you real quick, because I got in a tough situation, a dilemma. We traded and got Greg Vaughn, too. So now I got two left fielders with really good resumes. Rickey with his career, and Greg Vaughn he was one of the best power hitters in the game at the time. So I didn't have a DH, so I had to bring in Rickey and go, Rickey, I'm in this situation. with you and Greg Vaughn, and I'm not going to be able to play you every day. And he looks at me, and goes, "Hey, that's okay. Ricky's just wants to know when he's playing. If that's all you can do, just tell me when Ricky's is playing. I'm good." And he was great.
And then Bob Uecker passed away here just a couple of days ago. Voice of the Milwaukee Brewers since 1971, but a man who rose to prominence because he was a regular guest on the Johnny Carson Show. For those of you in our age group that remember when Johnny Carson hosted the Tonight Show, and he would appear as Mr. Baseball and tell these self-deprecating stories, and was quite humorous about it. And then later, of course, was on Mr. Belvedere. He was Harry Doyle in the Major League movie series. A man who had such an impact on the sport of baseball in so many ways. And I know you had the opportunity to spend at least a little time with Bob.
I did. I was very, very lucky. This game, there's so much you love about the game, but it does allow you to meet some really special people. And Bob Uecker was that for me. He's one of the funniest humans. He is the funniest human I think I've ever been able to hang around that was in this game. And we lived in the same little complex area in Kierland, which is in Scottsdale, Arizona, during spring training. So he loved to golf, and we'd be out hitting balls on the range. And what a lot is talked about his humor, but he loved the game. He had a passion for the game. He respected it, and he knew it. He would talk about players, but just to have him come down when we played Milwaukee and get me laughing for a half hour. And we had similar careers. I would tell him, I said, "Bob, I'm not funny like you, but I had the same career as you." And but he loved to fish, and my biggest disappointment when he passed away is we never did what we talked about doing, going salmon fishing on Lake Michigan. We had 2 trips planned, had to cancel both because of weather, and just never quite got it done. But what impact he made on the whole major leagues, but especially Milwaukee. Most beloved man you could ever have with one organization.
I saw where a Mets announcer, Howie Rose, recounted yesterday one of his favorite Bob Uecker lines back when Bob was coming up and perhaps was going to sign a professional contract, and he recounted the story where a Brave scout came to his home and told him and his dad that the Braves were thinking about signing Bob for $20,000, and Uecker's dad told him, "I'm sorry, we don't have that kind of money." Typical.
You talk about Joe Necro. He knew I caught a knuckleballer, and he would use that line on me before he got really popular. He goes, "Boch, you know how to catch a knuckleballer." He goes, "Just pick it up when it stops rolling."
All right, so I don't want to go through all elements of your career because we don't necessarily have the time for that because you've had such a long career.
Or you don't have the stats for it either.
Although I did mention in your introduction the stat of career wins. You're now 8th on the all-time managerial wins list. And this season you have an opportunity to, yes, let's hear it.
Thank you.
You have an opportunity to pass the likes of, I guess it would be Dusty Baker and Joe McCarthy, and could end up after this season being 6th on the all-time wins list. Do you think about that? The all of the people that have managed this game over the course of time being included in that group?
Man, it's hard to wrap my head around it. Matt, it really is. Again, I respect this game so much, and for me to be mentioned in those names and to be where I'm at, I've said this so many times, how blessed I have been able to do this as long as I do it, or as long as I've done it, and so to be in this situation, it's just, I'm very, very fortunate that that people have given me this opportunity. I retired for 3 years. If CY didn't call me, I wouldn't have been here, and because I didn't call anybody, I didn't know if I'd manage again, and I'm having a blast. I can't wait to get to work, and but those numbers, no, I don't think about it because we're riding, on the backs of all these players, and yeah, that number win, but really, we're being carried by somebody else, and we know it as managers, and I'm just fortunate that I've had enough people to trust me to manage their team on the field.
Having a long and successful career as a manager in the big leagues doesn't just open doors for you in the baseball world, and so many people in baseball, but it's opened so many other doors because you have friends in many other walks of life. And so if I could give you an opportunity to share with the folks here today, I'm going to throw out a few names, but one name I'm going to throw out is Darrell Hammond. And for those who may not know immediately the name Darrell Hammond was a guy who had success on Saturday Night Live for a number of years, probably most well known for his imitation of former President Bill Clinton. But you knew Darrell way back when. Tell us about your relationship with Darrell.
Yeah, we grew up together. We're both from Melbourne, Florida, and his dad was the coach of our Babe Ruth team. And Darrell was a good athlete, played shortstop, and so we played Babe Ruth, senior league, played high school ball, and he played junior college ball at Brevard Community College with me. So we spent a lot of time together on the field, and as he got older, then he started getting up on the bus on those trips in high school, and he would make us laugh. He'd do his little skit, and he was always doing voices and Bugs Bunny and all that. He was just so talented, and then when he stopped playing baseball, I knew at some point he would be doing something, whether in the movies. He just had so much talent, and I think he's now the second longest, but for a while he was the longest tenured member of Saturday Night Live. It's incredible the number of people that the voices that he did. He's big on Bill Clinton. That was his big one, and then he's really good at Trump, but they ended up giving Baldwin the gig, and so I know that bothered him. But but good friend.
In that time that he was on Saturday Night Live, did you have the opportunity to be there for a live presentation?
Never went to a live show. No, the timing, it never worked out. No, a couple of times we got together in New York. In fact, I didn't know he was in New York trying to get on Saturday Night Live. I went to a restaurant. He was waiting tables. I go, Darrell, what are you doing? And he goes, well, this is what you do when you're trying to survive up here to get that break. And he finally got that break.
All right, you mentioned movies, and both of us have been in the movies. I was in Major League 2. I'm sitting next to Bob Uecker in Major League 2. You, too, had an opportunity to be an extra in the movies. Can you tell us about that experience?
Yeah, that movie was Mr. Baseball with Tom Selleck. And so I was an extra. I swung the fungo and things to help out on the field. A friend of mine, he lived in Los Angeles, so he would occasionally get on commercials and stuff. So he called me. He says, "Hey, I got us a little 4-day thing. If you want to, see how they make movies." So I did it. I had a lot of fun with it. Got paid $100 a day. We got fed well, and I got to experience how long every scene takes, and the long days that they go through.
Did you have the opportunity to spend any time with Tom when
he was great? He spent a lot of time. He loved baseball. He was a big baseball fan, and he hung with us. He talked. I can't think of the actress from Japan, but she kind of was in her own world. But no, Tom hung around with us, and he was really, really good to us. A lot of fun.
Now, was there ever a shot of you having any kind of line in that movie, or no?
Yeah, there's always a shot, and that's what my buddy was saying, man. If there's some way, that they get you to do a line, then your pay goes way up. But and there's times when people say, there's some similarities between Tom and I. I don't know where they are, but he had a double there, and that did look almost exactly like him. But no, we had one guy that did get a couple lines.
Right, very good. Now, you also know people in the music industry. People know that Boch lives in Nashville, and there's so many musical artists, not just country artists, but artists from all types of music, live in the Nashville area. And I know that you had developed a friendship with Huey Lewis. How did that begin?
Yeah, well, when I was with the Giants, Huey Lewis is a Bay Area guy, and Huey loved baseball, and so that's kind of where it all started, and we became good friends. We've golfed together. Really smart guy too, along with being a great musician, and so like I said, I love this game for that reason too. You know, you get to meet a lot of guys. I got to get to know my favorite all-time singer. That was Waylon Jennings, and spent some time with him at a couple of shows, and he called me I think 3 times before opening day. He said, "All right, Boch, you do it your way this year, okay?" So that was huge to me, to get a chance to spend some time with him.
And Steve Perry from
Steve Perry,
Steve?
our big song, came from Journey, and there for a while, which we all know, and so he's a big fan too. So he would hang around. Brooks and Dunn, there's who played here last year, or we're pretty good friends too.
You ever thought about doing any singing yourself?
God, my dad wanted me to, he made me take accordion lessons. He was trying so hard to have somebody in the family play an instrument or sing, and that's another one that didn't hit the Bochy gene. And I tried, man, because when I grew up in the '60s, that was a big deal. It was when the rock bands were coming, so I wanted to play bass guitar. I couldn't even figure that out. So, but both my boys play a little bit, so there is hope there.
Did you get into Beatles mania when they came over in '64?
Oh yeah, I got into all of it. Yeah, I was a big Jim Morrison fan.
Okay.
Because he went to high school in Melbourne, so. I was all those bands. Yeah, they were huge.
All right, everybody knows, and you can imagine how difficult it is to be a manager of a Major League Baseball team. But I know that Boch has had a number of jobs throughout his time on this planet. What would you say is the most difficult job you ever had outside of managing a Major League Baseball team?
Wow, I've had...
And I say this knowing some of the things that you've done that were not baseball.
Yeah, real quick, I'll run through a few of them. I refinished furniture. Now, I did that for 3 years, and when I was 15, 16, 17, repaired and refinished furniture. But that was a lot of fun. But the most difficult job was I played in a summer league, which a lot of these guys are playing professional ball before they sign, like after the first year of college, they go and play in these different leagues. Mine was in Northern Virginia. Some are in Alaska. You got Cape Cod. And what they do is they find you a job. So you work during the day, then you play that night. And we played every night. It was called the Clark Griffith League. And then we were in another league called the Maryland Industrial League. Every night. We had 2 days off the whole summer. And so the job they got me was in concrete. Now, it gets hot in Virginia.
I think we're losing your mic here. Hold on just a second. Here we go.
Dead battery.
There you go.
So, had to be there at 6:30 every morning. Now, we played night games. So, I either had to dig the footers or we poured concrete. And so I either do the wheelbarrowing, or after a couple of weeks, they got me in the juking, which is, you're putting a finish on the concrete, and you're wearing these boots. And first day, I had big feet. I didn't have boots, and I had tennis shoes, and it just chewed my feet up. And I had to catch that night. And, man, that never happened. Went out, got me some boots, but that was the toughest job. And it probably was the best thing that happened to me, though, is doing that. And then last 3 weeks, I did landscaping. I had to swing this sledgehammer to tie these railroad ties together. I was the tallest one, so they had me driving stakes through there. You do that for 3 weeks, that bat starts feeling pretty light in your hand. And so the next year, I ended up having a great year in junior college ball, and that's when I was drafted.
Now, that when you were hammering those railroad spikes, that was part of the building of the Washington metro system,
The
was it not?
concrete part, yeah.
Oh, the concrete part
Yeah,
was,
they're
okay.
just starting, so we're on the outskirts of D.C. doing that. But the landscaping was around trees, around the parks where they were building the subway, so they wanted to build a foundation there. And I tell you what, when you're hitting these nails, if you don't hit them just right, they just kick off. And I had bumps all over my shins when I would miss it, because if you don't hit it head on, it just kicks out.
So if you ever go to Washington, D.C. and you take the subway, you take the metro there, just know that Boch was responsible for helping to build a part of it when you think about that. All right, finally, I'm going to end on a broadcaster note, because for the time that you were in San Francisco, of course, everybody knows John Miller, member of the Hall of Fame, in the Ford Frick winner. And John can be one of those entertaining guys. When you think about John Miller, what comes to mind first?
Wow, John and I had some great times. He does a great Ben Scully. He imitates me, and he does a great job of that. But I tell you what, you're talking about someone who knows the game. He knows the history of the game, and but I think we're looking at one of the greatest broadcasters ever in the game. That's how much I think of John Miller and how talented he is. He was with Baltimore, and then went. He was here, wasn't he? No.
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
He was here back in the late 70s.
Right. He was here for a little bit, but he, San Francisco. He's an icon there, but he's so gifted and has just a beautiful voice. And we would do the pregame show before every game, so John and I became very, very close.
I remember asking you a question early on at your time here, since I do the pregame show every now and then with Boch. And I said, I'm curious, when you would do the pregame show with John, what time, in the course of the game prep would you do that? And your response was, whenever John showed up.
Never knew when he was going to show up, man. And John would get irritated at me because sometimes he'd be late. So I go, okay, you want to play this game? So I would be on the field, or I'd walk in the outfield. I could see him looking for me. I wouldn't make eye contact, and I just want to tick him off a little bit. And but I had fun with him. But the pregame show, I said, John, this isn't my show. This is your show, and because the first 6 minutes, he would just talk about something.
I once interviewed John for the Rangers pregame show, and I think I asked 3 questions, and we usually have about maybe 5 minutes, 6 minutes tops for that interview segment. I asked John 3 questions, and 13 minutes later, the interview was over. I'm like, I can't use this. I'm going to have to chop it up. But he can certainly weave a story, which is one of the reasons why he's in the Hall of Fame.
Oh, he can paint a picture with the best of them. Yeah, John. Occasionally we still talk, and we go to San Francisco, so he'll come down and we'll talk for a while. Yeah, he's one of the best ever.
Ladies and gentlemen, your Texas Rangers manager, coming up on his 3rd season, and again his 28th in the major leagues, Bruce Bochy. Bruce,
thank you.
Thanks so much for the time.
All right, let's all have a great year, all right? We hope to make you proud this year. Thank you.